Well, I got the transaxle out of the Massey Ferguson all taken apart. Wasn't in as good a shape as what I hoped it would be in. It's actually a pretty sad shape. At some point, probably didn't take the grease out and put oil in, but at some point this shaft here ate into the case here and here. I rebuilt the journals with weld. The way I did that, I just wrapped the bearing in tape, gobbed a bunch of weld in there, and set the bearing in place. Weld won't stick to the tape, so once it was all set up, I just popped it out, and I have a perfect journal here for the bearing to sit back in. There was no bushing at all in the center here to support the center of the shaft. So what I did was I took a brass plumbing fitting, which worked perfectly because it has the exact same inner diameter as this shaft here where it's going to ride on. And what I did was I cut the fitting up to make it basically like a bushing, and then I wrapped it in tape again, got a bunch of weld in there and set it in place, and it's drying right now, but I had to add a whole bunch of material here. It was really chewed out, like 1/4 of an inch. It was pretty crazy. I don't know how the thing even still worked, but the way he had it before, had it put back together, he didn't have any bushing here. He had some weld here because he already tried to repair it or whatever, but didn't do a very good job, so I redid it, added this bushing here. I'll show you on the other side. I did the same thing to here in the center support. You might be able to see how much weld I actually had to add. It's not too clear, but I don't know if you can see the color difference there. I added quite a bit of weld in there too, and the same on the ball bearing journal right here. Same thing, I just put tape on it and set the bearing in and popped it out when it was dry. Seems to work pretty good. I'm hoping this weld is going to hold up. I don't see why it shouldn't, because it's not going to be wearing here, it's just going to be holding the bearing. Same with on here where the bushing is. Another thing is when the shaft kind of ate into the case downwards, the gears, this here gear here actually ate into the case a little bit too, so I had to patch that with weld. It wasn't right through, but there was a hairline crack, so I patched it just so I don't have any oil leaking out or anything like that. The weird thing is, this transaxle still worked. I knew it had been apart before, I didn't know why, but once I took it apart I obviously realized what had happened. But the funny thing is, there's no damage to the gears. There's a slight bit of marring on the shaft here, but I cleaned it up with emery cloth, so it should ride on that bushing nice. Yeah, it's weird, there's no obvious wear, even where the ring gear contacts it or anything like that, or the pinion gear I should say. So he might have replaced some of the gears in here when he tried to repair it with weld the first time. The guy didn't do a very good job, that's why I had to redo it all and add that bushing in the middle, but it should work pretty good. I don't know how brass works for bushings, but it's got to be better than nothing. See, it's got the tape on there, and yeah, once it's all set up and everything, I'll just pop it out and I'll have a bushing. Another thing I did was pop the bearings out of the input shaft. Here, I'll show you. I took the bearings out of there because I had quite a bit of play in them, and it turns out I had an old, it was from an MTD, it was just a forward and reverse kind of transaxle that I was going to throw out. I'm going to use one of the bushings off that. It's slightly different than, you can see it's slightly longer than the original bushings that came in here, but it's going to sit right here. And on this shaft here, there's no provision for an O-ring type seal on here anyway, so it won't matter if it sticks out beyond the case. On this one, I'm going to reuse these bushings here because they're not too bad, and they have a provision for O-ring seal on each side, so I'm going to add those. He didn't have any seals in there at all, but I'll have to have them because I'm going to be running Lucas hub oil in here. I'm not going to bother drilling and tapping for a drain plug because I'm never going to be draining this thing out. I'm just going to fill it and use it till it blows, basically. The one thing I am going to do though is drill and tap that area right there where the input shaft bearings go. I'm going to drill and tap a space in between there so I can actually pump a few shots of grease into there every once in a while, because there's no way that this gets any extra grease after it's been installed. There's no grease that's going to flow up in there. Both the axle bearings will get grease just from flowing out of the case. I noticed that on my Ford tractor. I didn't tap for grease nipples or anything like that, but I noticed that I do get hub oil leaking out the axle shaft tubes, so I know they're going to be properly lubricated. I didn't tap the input shaft on my Ford, but if I ever have it out again, I'm going to do it. Anyways, that's just a look at what I had to do to this freaking transaxle here.